First things first, I am an amateur at port work. I was asking a buddy of mine earlier tonight of how he would do this, etc., and he's done maybe a head or two in his life. I'm not an expert at this. That's not really the purpose of this video. I'll give the basic principle of porting, which is, this is a shrouded valve heel due to this feature. That's bad for flow. Smoothing it out like this so air comes out of the valve and can flow out. Other than here, it comes out and hits the wall and has to turn back around. Bad flow, good flow. And that's the general ideal point. You look at this and you try and imagine how the air flows through, and you try to make it as smooth and seamless as you can. That's the gist of it. I'm not on a 300 head, which I've done one before in my life. This is number 2. Smooth these hard edges out here, which only a EFI head will have the shrouds like this. That's the only ones I've ever messed with. The carburetor heads that came on a carburetor motor were very different and did not have this feature here. The only other place I would focus any real attention at all, the intake port is quite large and quite smooth overall. Like, there's room for improvement, but overall she's pretty good. Look at the exhaust. It goes in and it just hits a wall. Like, I don't know how well you can see that, but there is just a tiny amount of room. Well, that's one retainer that I'm never going to find. But you go in the port and it just hits a wall. So I would put some effort into making that exhaust port look a little bit more like that. My camera's crap. That's not the point of this video. That's my little 2 cents on doing that, but that's not the point of this video. The reason, and I've mentioned this before, a 300 with an EFI head will not take any time at all. Like, that truck, the way it sits now, has some very mild port work, nothing like this. If I put more than 0 degrees, maybe 2 degrees base timing in it, and I put it under a load and give it throttle, especially if I'm running ported timing, it will spark knock like crazy. Like, I've joked, but you can watch my towing videos in the past, and I just lay on the gas and spark knock. We just turn the radio up. We ignore that because it's all you hear all the time. And the culprit of that is all of these very hard, sharp edges. This heel would have been a sharp point that came out a little bit farther. This one was burned off the least. This one was burned off the most. The back of the engine, because your coolant patches start up here and they float back. This cylinder is naturally a little bit harder. And you can see some of the cauterization around this, which is probably the wrong use of that word for this application, but on a couple of these cylinders, you can tell where it's running really hot, and it just erodes away this inside edge. So I would imagine when this thing's running, this is just glowing red hot all the time, which is why you have such a severe issue with pre-detonation and spark knock. That being said, hopefully by smoothing all of this out, it alleviates that. And from my understanding, you look at pictures of the combustion chamber on different heads, a 240 head and a 300 head, before the EFI head, you would not have these issues. You would have a little bit lower compression on 300, but you would have much bigger ports, And because the valve is unshrouded, you wouldn't have the spark knock issues that I do. And I believe the only reason they got away with that on the EFI motors is because of how precisely it could needle feel to each one. They could prevent the pre-detonation of being an issue. And keep in mind, you have a carburetor heel. And what these two cylinders like, and the jetting and tuning the carburetor, is not what those two cylinders like. So you got, you two on the out always run a little lean, and these two always run a little rich, and those two are happy. So there are ways around that. Have 2 or 3 different carburetors on it, or I've seen a Jeep guy on a inline 6 had one carburetor for each cylinder, and they were the Makuni little slide carburetors, like off of a 4-wheeler or a motorcycle of some kind. So, just my 2 cents on it. The reason a 300 EFI head, at least, will cause a tremendous amount of spark knock with any kind of ignition timing. And 2 cents on doing port work that, hopefully that's helpful to you. Take what I say with a grain of salt. I have not done, I'm not professional, I'm not an engine builder. I've only done this a couple of times in my life. I have a clue, but check it with someone else's input and make your own decision. Hopefully it's helpful, but make your own decision. That's all, folks. If I can turn this. So it doesn't have the giant banner screaming, "This was your problem." But it has a lot of little things. Cylinder, I sprayed oil in all of these to look for leakiness. But cylinders 2 and 4 looked nice and clean, not a lot of carbon buildup. They looked like they were burning reasonably cleanly. 1, 3, 5, and 6 looked like they've been burning a lot of oil. Not so much on the plug, but the smell of carbon buildup in the chamber. They looked a little nastier. I should have shown that before I put oil in them. And if you look down here, I did spray some more, and then you can see it dripping. There's bell without flashlight, never mind. That just kind of whites everything out, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyhow, this one's leaking. That one was leaking. That one's fine. That one was leaking. This one's leaking. That one is. It's hard to show on camera what I did. This is not the best of tests, but I sprayed some oil in there on each one. And although it's really hard to show up on camera, you can see oil leaking out of a lot of them. So, I would expect if I left this long enough for oil to leak out, even though some of them remain pretty well dry. That's why I was buying oil. What's concerning to me is the reason I've started all this is there had a very bad misfire. Port throttle cruising below 3,000 RPM, you never really noticed it. You get on the gas gun pill, especially with the trailer, and it would just start misfiring horribly. It's not ignition, it's not fuel. I've gone through both those extensively trying to trace this problem down. And I began thinking I had bump valve. Well, usually bump valve leaks a lot more than that. And the head gas is not blown. So, I don't know. Not the giant red herring I wanted to see, but that many leaky valve seats, maybe that was it. I will put my new ported head on. I deshrouded all the valves and did some work in the chambers on every single, not in the chamber, some work in the bowl area and the ports on all of them. Just smoothing them out, making a whole lot better than these giant shrouds. They are very sharp and like to cause spark knock. That's why you can't give these any timing, is that makes for all your spark knock. And this one has a crack in a couple of places over here. Focus. Can you see that crack right there? All the oil on the side of this motor. It's from that little crack. I don't know how deep it goes, but it caused a big oil leak. So that one has no cracks. Yeah. We'll see if this fixes the misfire. I'm hoping it does. So, what I've done, so I'm never putting dual alternators in this truck. And the smog pump is obviously never going to go back on. And the bit that went down here that would have, well, I'm holding it that way. It doesn't go that way, it goes this way. You guys put down here that would have held the smog pump at some point, and all those little pieces, gone, off, out of the way. Now the lower radiator hose be easier to get to. Now I could, I'm debating on it currently in my head. It is currently being debated on. Go through and saw off, because I'm probably never going to the big alternators. I have no interest or need ever to have more than a 60, 70 amp alternator on this truck. Cut off bracket here, there, and here-ish. And obviously, radius it back down and around. Just to get rid of it. Because it's never going to hold. I have 4 bolts sold to the motor. I need this bolt and this bolt. I honestly don't need more than that ever on this truck. And unfortunately, it is fix and repair daily. So you do need to do things in here, and I blew that radiator hose once, and that was a pain to get to. As I'm sure there's other things that, just less crap in your way that you have to work around. And there's also the thought of, maybe one day I'll have more than 4 little lights. Maybe I'll add an air conditioner one day. Maybe I'll have more than just a small radio at some point. So maybe at some point I will need more than the 60, 70 amp alternator I currently have. I highly doubt that day will ever come. This truck's been mine for 10 years, and electric fuel pump going, all of my lights on, including the one on the back. I have one in the back, just one. Radio blaring, heater going full blast. You watch the voltage gauge go from, or the voltmeter go from 14.5 to 14.2. I'm not even straining the tiny alternator I have. So, and there's one 50 amp fuse that's the master fuse for the entire truck. Well, with exceptions to that one, that's for trailer. So, probably not gonna cut it off, but that right there, I assure you, compared to what it was, will look just a little bit cleaner than it did, because there's not a bunch of crap hanging down there.